friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
You can talk. We'll just talk about current events until he jumps on.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, 2 minutes, and then we'll do it. You doing all right?
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, and it was quite a productive day. Got a lot done. I realized that I'm gonna have to split this book into two portions because it's already past 450 pages, and it's more
Wow.
than I want to do in one book. So I'm gonna have to split it into two.
Oh my
So I
goodness.
decided that's what I'm gonna do today.
Right on. We just Isaac, Kaylee, and baby Ayla just came over. They just left a few minutes ago, so it's always a good time to spend with the grandchild. Yeah.
That's the best. There's nothing better.
Yeah, and you're soon to have another one there. Congratulations on that.
Yes, very
That's
exciting.
exciting. Yeah, that's super exciting. I was teasing Justin. I said, "Oh, you're naming your next child after me because that's my name in Hebrew."
Oh, that's
Elishama.
so awesome. Perfect.
Yeah, it's gonna be another
Perfect.
cutie, another cute, smart child.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
your grandchildren are so intelligent. I was just when they were here, I could not believe. I still couldn't believe that they were only 2 and 1 year old. Like, wow.
I know. It
Way
is crazy.
advanced. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I'm planning to
I just
teach Ayla all kinds of things too.
oh
Already
yeah.
trying to get her to
So
say
much
Abba.
fun.
Yeah.
Nice.
hmm
Yeah, I just like to watch what their interests are and then, you know, um, guide them in that. So,
Yeah. And Ella, she's a very deep thinker. You can tell
oh
already. She
goodness,
just
she
extremely.
has tremendous focus. But let's go ahead and kick this off since it is time. We appreciate everybody joining us. I'm Zen Garcia and Lisa George is co-host with us, and we're waiting for Gary Wayne. He's going to be just a few minutes late, but this will be the next installment of the monthly AMA, and want to announce that we are going to be doing an AMA. I'm going to start doing those. We'll continue that whole series. So please do send in your questions, comments, anything that you'd like to share or that you'd like to bring up in program. You can send it to my email, zengarcia2010 at gmail.com, or reach out to Lisa, or even to contact us at sacredwordpublishing.com to send in your inquiries. But I'm looking forward to doing all that again. It's a good time, involving the audience and fellowship and answering just a wide array of questions from left field, right field. I mean, we have some very um, interesting seekers and people that are well versed in a lot of um, a lot of conspiracy, prophecy, mythology, you name it. And so we get it from all around, and it's always a good time just seeing what the pulse of the audience is, what their interests are, and what they're investigating for their time and focus. So, but Lisa, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. Just as I was enjoying time with my new granddaughter, and Isaac and Kaylee were over here with her, and she's just growing so fast. I can't believe she's going to be 3 months already in about a week here, and just such a joy. We could just see that she's even seems like she's kind of understanding what we're saying to her, and I'm trying to teach her some words. I've been playing the piano for her. She's very musical. She loves music. If she's crying and I start playing the piano, she'll just stop immediately. So it's so cute to have a baby in the family. It's been a really long time, so it's really enjoyable. Such a joy to just
Uh,
have her around.
I bet she really loves that. The kids are just filled with so much wonder, and everything is just awesome to them. And so, yeah, everything is of great interest. They're just awestruck by the world and everything in it. And sometimes, as adults, we tend to forget just how incredible this world is, and our our part in it, and what a great blessing all that is. So they
Yes,
are a
yeah.
constant reminder of that.
Yeah, and Isaac took her to the beach last week for the first time. He went into the water with her already. He was a lifeguard and
Nice.
a swim instructor for children a while back, and so he's determined she's going to be a swimmer. We'll probably teach her how to bodyboard and surf, and just she didn't like it too much being dunked in the water, but at least it
Oh, I
wasn't as
bet.
cold as yeah, that was kind of a shock for her, I think, but she'll get used to it. I think it's kind of natural for babies to be able to float in the water naturally. Probably once she gets to be 6 to 9 months old, we'll probably teach her how to flip herself over, and they just naturally float. It's really amazing. I used to teach swimming lessons as well, and to children even as young as 9 months old. It's really cool to just see them how they just it's so natural for them to be in the water because that's what they grew up in, basically, right?
Yeah, yeah, in the womb. It's
Mm-hmm.
a natural state for them. And but hello
Yeah.
everybody in the chat as well, Brick and Sherry and all the other moderators, Tammy. Um, we appreciate all of you taking the time to be with us, Donna Smith, and I did send out the books, so hopefully y'all will receive them. Do let me know if you have or have not, and we'll keep a monitor on that. And when we start doing the AMAs as well, I will, give out books as well for all of you, and just as a appreciation for all that you do, and also know that you can support my children and the grandkids through the Patreon. They have it. Justin, I believe, has it connected with each one of the shows, and it goes to help them to be able to stay at home and to work from home and to not only raise their children, but to focus on, we're a family of scribes and we run a publishing company, sacredwordpublishing.com, and also several nonprofits and in support of orphans and widows. We're currently building a school in Kenya, and I'll be doing an update on all that as well. And do want to give a shout out to Jim and Joanne, Bruno, and all the others, Ren, that have been supporting us over the years to help us enable us to do these things. And also I did receive some letters from other people that want to support us monthly. I will be reaching out to all of you. Just know that it's been a crazy busy time for me the last couple weeks, and I'm still in catch-up mode, but I am trying to respond back to all of the emails and the inquiries that people have sent in. Just please be patient with me, and I will try to respond. And if I don't within a couple weeks or a month, please do reach back out to me. I may have overlooked because I do get a lot of emails and also a lot of spam and trash, and that gets thrown into the mix. But I appreciate all of you, and we look forward to hearing what Gary has to say as well. And I'm very excited. He's always got an incredible following of people that are interested in his work, and I do hope that it will work out for me to be able to be there and at Jeremiah's Truther conference as well. And I heard, Lisa, that you are going as well, so perhaps we will be able to share and break bread. If it works out for me, I'm going to attend. But
Actually, I'm not sure if
go
we're
ahead.
going to be able to. I don't think I'm not sure if we're going to be able to make it. Actually, we might be in a different country during that time. But I did hear
Right on.
Chelsea and Paulino said they're definitely going to be going.
Oh,
So
yeah,
you'll be able to
okay,
meet.
yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
that's right.
that's okay. No,
Yeah,
no, that's
so
okay.
it'll be a good time to meet any of the people that are familiar with our work and that support this channel and that support Flat Out Truth as well, and all the other Skiba News Nation and really good people. So I know Gary's planning on attending, and I would like to do so. It just all matters if it works out and I'm able to get from the airport to the venue. That's the most
Yeah.
important aspect, and that always seems to be difficult ever since C-19 and all the shutdowns. A lot of companies that used to cater to, helping people with disabilities and getting wheelchair access and all that. A lot of that has shut down and is no longer available. So, but we will see. Hopefully, God willing, it will all work out. But what
Yeah,
have you been up to?
that is like a huge challenge every time, just to think
It
about like
is.
how are you getting from the airport to the conference? Are you going to be comfortable? It seems like it's probably pretty painful to travel as it is, but then, to have that
Yeah, it
extra
is.
concern, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
we
and I
have
will
Gary.
only do it if I have something set in place that will get me there. Because the last time I flew out to Dallas for the Flat Earth conference there to speak, there was no way for me to get from the airport to the venue. And thank God, Isaac Chavez and his family, they had driven there to the venue and had a very large truck. And Isaiah and Isaac were able to lift up my wheelchair and also transfer me into the into the seat. And so I was able to make it. Otherwise, we would have been just stuck at the airport. So, and
Wow,
I
what an
don't want
ordeal.
that to be, you know, that that to happen again. So,
Yeah, I can see why that what an ordeal you had to go through. But it
yeah.
looks like I see Gary has joined us now.
All right. All right.
Yeah, so I
Hello,
would like to
Gary.
welcome. Yeah, Gary, how are you doing?
I am
Maybe.
doing good, so sorry for being late, but travel is not always as easy as you'd like it to be.
No
Isn't
worries.
that the truth?
We're enjoying just catching up, and we're about ready to introduce you, Gary. So I wanted to welcome everyone to another Ask Me Anything monthly session with researcher, speaker, and author Gary Wayne. As Zen said earlier, this is your host, Lisa George, and Zen has joined me as well on here on Zen's channel, Zen Garcia. And we've received a bunch of questions during last month's show that Gary will be answering today. If you do have a question for Gary, please join the live chat on YouTube and put it in all capital letters so that I can see them. And we just thank you to all our moderators again. I see Brick, Sherry, Tammy should be breezing in anytime here. And we just thank you guys for all your help. And so, Brother Gary, if you could give us some information of where people can buy your awesome books and how are you doing? And we can maybe fill us in on what's going on with you and maybe some other shows. I noticed you've been doing quite a few shows.
Yeah, been staying very, very busy, although I'm moving into the period now where I'm going to move the interviews down from 6 to 7 a week to 2 to 3 over the summer, and then we'll pick it up again a little bit more in the fall again when it gets really busy. So yeah, so staying busy. And so the best way to get a hold of me is through my website, the Genesis6conspiracy.com, Genesis 6, the number 6conspiracy.com. And on that website, there's a generous excerpt of all 98 chapters of book 1, all 84 chapters of book 2. There is a contact the author contact. So just go to that page and just click right on there. That's the email that comes through to me. Be patient. It may take me a couple of months to get back to you, but I will get back to you. So if you're looking to have a question answered or looking for more information in a document, just be sort of specific on the document. I have a lot. I just don't send them all out all at once because I haven't got them set up that way. Because I need them to be able to be more accessible for my own work. So name it by topic. I do those at no charge. And if you wanted to get a hold of a copy to purchase, you can go to the buy now page. So buy page 1 is for book 1, buy page 2 is for book 2, and then book 3 is the bundling page where, and on all of the pages and including the bundling page, if you buy both copies on page 3, you'll get a discount with it. If you buy more than one copy of either Genesis 1 or Genesis 2 on the other buy pages, those will give you the discounts that go with it as well. So that's the fastest, easiest way to get a hold of me, to get a hold of a signed copy. If you wanted to buy from barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, amazon.ca, there's links directly over there. And if you wanted to get the digital version, there's links on the buy page right to Amazon for the Kindle version of both. And I noticed a couple days ago, I don't know whether it still is, I didn't check this morning on the way out, but there's the Audible versions are best sellers in both categories right now, in several categories. So doing very well on the Audible edition, where both of those came out, one in September and one in late December.
Wow. Yeah, I noticed that too. Yeah. And did I notice that there was a special for the Audible, or was I just seeing things maybe?
Yeah, they had a discount on it as well. I think it was $6.95 or something to get one. Yeah.
Great deal. Great deal. So if you guys like to listen to books being read instead of the paper copy, that's such a great deal. $6.95 for the Audible. Wow. I was really impressed with that. And I noticed too, Gary, just wanted to mention some of the other channels where people could find your work. I just did a quick scan on YouTube. It looks like you've done some shows within the past several months with a channel called Wake Up with Mia, Exploring the KA, The Deep End, Kingdom Productions Network, and Sabbath at Midnight. Was there any other ones that I'm missing there, Gary, that you think people could find your work and check it out?
Yeah, but too many to name.
Well, 6 or 7 a week. That's crazy. I don't know how in the world you can keep up with that.
I hate to go personal and do the naming if I'm not going to name everybody. So I think I'll try not to offend anybody on that.
Well, you could everyone could, if they want to find Gary's work, you go on YouTube. The way I did it, I just put in Gary Wayne recent interviews or something to that effect, and all of these came up. So I'm sure there's quite a bit more I'm missing. My apologies for not mentioning all of the channels, but as you can tell, he's a very busy guy, and I'm glad you'll be taking a little bit more of a break for summer. Are you working on any other books or anything else?
Well, I have intent to work on book 2 over the summer while I've cut down on the shows and in between visiting with family. So hoping to get back going on that. In terms of conferences, I have one that's lined up for Dallas that I think Zen is also attending with Jeremiah Skiba and the Truthers Conference. So looking forward to doing that at the end of October. And I've got a curriculum thing I'm working with the Deep End on. Still don't have quite all the details as to how it's going to work, but I'll be down probably in November, right after the Truthers Conference, to start filming, video recording, not to date myself too much by saying filming, but to have it videoed and do it. And they want me to do a couple of curriculums. So they want me to do one on giants that has a chronology attached to it, and I'm going to see what I can do to sort of frame that down and not have it to be too, because there's so many details and things that I'm trying to figure out how to frame that one. The other one is they wanted me to do one on prophecy. So I think I'm going to dig into that one fairly deep in terms of just sort of helping people to try where to start, how do you sort through all the information, and just show people what I do and see how that sort of goes over.
Nice. Yeah, there's definitely a demand for your content, Gary. I can see that just by the number of interviews that people have requested for you to do. I also noticed there's several other, I don't know if you've heard of these other conferences that have been kind of popping up for the summer and fall. Just to give you an idea, I think Steve Quayle and Timothy Alberino are doing one in Montana called Nephilim. And then there's another one going on in Kentucky. I'm not sure who's running this one, but it's called Spiracy Con. And then, of course, there's the Truther Con. Have you heard of any other conferences going on this year? I'm surprised they're all like popping up here.
Yeah, no, I haven't been contacted by many on conferences because, as everybody knows, they're difficult to organize, tough to make money on. Yeah. So So yeah, interesting. I mean, I know I was not extended an invitation to either one of those, and it's kind of odd because of the Genesis 6 conspiracy and how much I focus on Nephilim. So interesting.
Right. Yeah, it seems like you would be the king over there at Spiracy Con, but I don't know, and Nephilim as well. But yes, and I remember you did quite a few shows in the past, maybe I don't know how many years ago when I first started watching your shows and got acquainted with your work was with Steve Quayle and Timothy Alberino, as well as Zen and Rob and a bunch of those,
Yep.
all you guys would get together and do a roundtable, and those were just amazing. I really look forward to those. But the conferences sound like a good time. I wish we would be able to make some of them this year, but we've already committed to doing something overseas, and so we're looking forward to that. But and also too, coming from Hawaii, it's pretty expensive and just a long flight to get anywhere. So we just have to be very selective with what we're doing. We can't just get in the car and drive, But yes.
Yeah, nothing is inexpensive to do these days. So yeah, one has to be prudent.
Yes, exactly. And not to mention going through like the jet lag. I mean, jet lag from here to the East Coast is really bad from Hawaii, and just the amount of time you have to transfer and for transfer flights and everything. And we just have to be a lot more selective here as we're getting older to travel. But we have a bunch of questions that people have submitted. Gary, you ready to get into those?
I am.
Okay. Well, let's start out with, and again, just to remind everyone, and I see that there's some people that have submitted questions in the chat already. Thank you again for putting them in all capital letters. I will be retrieving the questions as Gary is answering this first question here. So let's start out with Donna Smith. She is asking, was the staff of Moses from the tree of life or sapphire or both? Is it the same thing as the rod of wonder?
Yeah, really interesting questions. So typically when we're talking about the sapphire and any connections to the tree of life and Moses's rod and things like that, those are extra biblical, context or reference, depending on how you want to look at it in terms of what happened in Genesis. So we want to be careful with that. And as people might be familiar with, as I'm pretty disciplined to not try and go too far beyond what it says in the Bible unless I've got a pretty good sense of firm personal sense that additional information is lined up. Obviously where something outside the Bible agrees exclusively and is 100% the same, that's easy. It's just when you're getting maybe some additional details, you want to be a little bit careful. So let's just sort of look at Moses's rod first or staff. And it shows up in Exodus 4:2-5. But the context on the staff, I think, comes from more of Exodus 3:1, when Moses was tending the flock when the flaming bush appeared before him, and so typically shepherds tended the flock with their staff. So that's kind of the context for leading into Exodus 4:2-5, where the staff is first mentioned biblically. And in that staff, it is God turns it into a serpent for Moses to show him some of the things that he's going to be using when he goes before Pharaoh, and ultimately performs with that staff turning into a serpent when he goes before Pharaoh. So this is a staff, and it's not clear where that staff has come from. Some people look at it from the occult side, that this was actually knowledge that you could have where you could get a serpent and make it stiff and stay in that sort of form. And then on instruction, you could have it turn back into a snake. And that's thought to be, from the occult side, how the pharaohs did their serpent. But we don't get context that this was a serpent before. We don't get context where the staff comes from. So the staff is likely given to him, or Moses makes it while he's, becoming a shepherd after his exile from Egypt. So I would not say that this is Moses' staff from the tree of life. So I would say, though, is something is special about this staff, that it has that ability to do what it did. So no, I would first say no. Let's not try and go there from the tree of life, because the tree of life, we don't get reference to the tree of life after the flood, and Moses is showing up about just under 1,000 years after the flood, and it was in the Garden of Eden, and the Garden of Eden has the same sort of directions and geographical points, like the four rivers, for example, that are mentioned in the Eden account, are the same geographical areas that Abraham is provided in Genesis 15 as the land of the covenant. So they would have been, my understanding, one of the same, which makes sense because that's the land that God kept for himself, from the Mount Hermon to the Sea of Aqaba, the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean, and to the south, and the Nile to the east, or to the west, and Euphrates to the east. So when Moses leaves Egypt, he goes into southern area of the even below the covenant land, and where the Medians are. So it doesn't appear he made it somewhere into a place that would have had the tree of life in the covenant land, and I doubt whether God would have permitted the giants and the Canaanites to have access to the tree of life in the covenant land. So some people might say, well, God moved the tree and that's what he took the wood from. Okay, I get that, but we don't get scripture for that. So when there's not anything supernatural other than what God has the ability to do, and this is one of the signs. So whatever is going on with the staff, it's distinct from what the occult sciences do, because they try and counterfeit, and they have to work within the laws of the physical universe. But signs that God provides are outside the laws of the physical universe, like the star staying over Bethlehem. Stars can't do that, but God can make it do it. God can make the sun stand still. God can cause 3 days of darkness, as in the time of the Exodus, and all of the other things that he did. So he does things that the gods and their priests and their followers can't do. So there's something unique to it, but I think it's just that God has the ability to do anything. And so he can change a wooden staff into a serpent, whereas the occult sciences would have to do something like I was describing, because they don't have that same sort of ability. So no, I don't think we can get there with saying it's going back to the tree of life or any of the other rods. And there's a big list of rods and staff in polytheism that typically have more Nephilim connections than biblical connections, to put it mildly. So the Shatia is the sapphire, divine sapphire, that I think Donna is referencing. And this divine Shatia was indeed a sapphire. And in the Kabbalistic and mystical accounts, not the biblical accounts, it's considered the third tablet. Biblically, we only get 2 tablets in the Ark, not 3. And so I cover this in book 1, by the way, for people who want more detail on it. And that the Shatia held all of the knowledge that was and would ever be. It is like the emerald tablets. It is like all the other allegories used for the Hall of Records is another one, or the tablets of Thoth, or the golden apples. All of these, the pearls of wisdom. All of these are allegories for this ancient knowledge, and that's what this Jewish mystical version of the sapphire, the Shatia, is symbolizing. So what they're saying is Moses received the antediluvian knowledge, and then it was passed down to Solomon in their belief system. And where he got it from, it doesn't really say, but one sort of deduces either God gave it to them in that, or he brought it with him from therapeutate of the Egyptian religion. So again, all of that is leading in a direction that probably we shouldn't be going in. But it sort of gets even more clear that this is not a monotheist additional detail, but more that's coming out of polytheism, because this is the sapphire that is said to be one of the stones of Satan, and in that mythos fell from heaven when he fell from heaven. Just as we get all of these mythologies around the world of these gems or stones falling from earth that are storehouses of wisdom and technology. So I would say that the sapphire has got nothing to do with the staff either, and the sapphire was not part of the monotheist history or stored in the ark. We don't get any details on an additional gem that's in there.
All right. Thank you so much, Gary. It always reminds me of, in Jewish legend and other writings as well, this particular rod of wonder is also kind of allegorized in the Sword of the Stone. Have you made that connection as well? The Sword of the Stone with
it is
King Arthur.
The swords and the rods are very, very similar mythos. So the rod is held by the Nephilim ruler, as is rod, is scepter, and or sword. I mean, they're kind of the same, same coin, two different allegories for the same thing. And so when we hear about rulers ruling with a iron scepter or an iron rod, that's the reference.
All right. And I would also encourage Donna and anyone else wanting more information about this. Zen has written a pretty excellent book. It's one of my favorite books of his, called The Vestures of Light and Rod of Wonder, available at Sacred Word Publishing. So just for reference. But let's go on to the next question here. This is from Mitchell Steffen. Was Atlantis before the Great Flood and possibly before the second creation narrative, since it is described as a single event of the destruction of the city, not a worldwide catastrophe?
It's a really good question that Mitchell or Michael answers, which I think it's Mitchell, Mitkael maybe. So Atlantis and ancient civilizations, there's a conflation that sort of goes on. And so there's kind of two different versions for these ancient civilizations. And so one is the standard one, that there was 4 civilizations in some accounts. Some say 7, some say 9, some say 11. So whatever the number, there was multiple civilizations before the flood. And Lemuria is thought to be one of these. Atlas is generally always one of those minimum 4 civilizations. But Lemuria is more of a Johnny-come-lately mythos, and it's was inserted by Helen Blavatsky and others, and so it's not clear to me whether it is one of those 4, 7, 9 civilizations before the flood. Likely it is, but you could say it might even be older. And in the occult version, Lemuria is the parent civilization that seeds all the other antediluvian civilizations. But what's not clear in those accounts to me that I read, because these are all mystical accounts, is that when did Lemuria occur? Was it sometime just before the flood? Or was it back between Genesis 1 and 2, if you're a fan of a destruction of the world, and the gap in the renewal of the earth as we would understand that. So to me, I think it's likely part of the antediluvian age. I wouldn't take it back to Genesis 1, 1-2, but according to the polytheist records, that there's these cycles and things, and it was that civilization before, but that doesn't explain how it was able to seed the antediluvian civilization. But they could be holding back some of the information. So let's get back to now with the Atlantis side of it. I think Atlantis was probably the most important antediluvian civilization, and I don't believe Atlantis is older than being before the flood as well. And again, I know there's some versions out there that would like to take that back, similar to what I said about Lemuria. So again, a conflation going on there, or two distinct older civilizations using the same names, is almost like a renewed civilization, if you would understand it that way. But the volume of information that we have really describes it as a antediluvian civilization, and the one that the occult wants to rebuild for the end time with the new Atlantis and the 10 kings of Atlantis, that was trying to set up this world government of their 10 Nephilim kings with one universal mystical religion. And this was the golden age. And if all of those terms are starting to sound a little bit more familiar and being used, it's because nothing is new under the sun, and what was will be again. Right. So Atlantis is not just described in a single event of water damage. In the Plato accounts that he gets from Solon, who reads this off the pillars from the ancient Egyptian priests of these ancient records of this, there indeed was flood destruction, and that's pretty much standard, but there was also other catastrophes as well. And this involved earthquakes and volcanoes, things like that. And so what happens is Zeus collects the council of the gods, Psalms 82, for people who want to take that back biblically, to punish Atlanta and the earth. So again, for people who think that and want to hold people who don't know and polytheists accountable when they're saying that God's an evil God because he brought the flood. I think God could have brought the flood, or he permitted the fallen angels to bring the flood. But in all the fallen angel occult polytheist accounts, it's these council of gods, this pantheon that brings this catastrophe all around the world. So don't let them get away with that. Have them reconcile their own versions before they start slandering the God Most High, and push back a little bit on that. And so with that comes not only flood, but storms, earthquakes, and volcanoes, as I thought about. And the gods are causing this. And there's a connection that they all make around the world as well to this event, in use of asteroids or meteors or stars, and allegorized as the Pleiades. 3, sometimes 2, but generally 3 stars out of the Pleiades come down and hit the oceans and the earth and cause this significant event. So biblically, we get connections to that period of time with the Pleiades, particularly in Job 38:31. Where it has a reference, can you bind the Pleiades? And why would you bind the Pleiades? And if you had the power to bind them, do you have the power to release them? And is that an inference to these asteroids? I can't make that connection, but it's kind of eerie. And in Amos, the Pleiades is mentioned in association with pouring out the water over the land that brings forfeit and destruction to the city and brings it to ruin. So again, that seems to be a reference to the Atlantean destruction, which would now imply, some further events like volcanoes and earthquakes and things like that. And then when you look at Psalms 18, 7 through 16, you get fire and lightning and smoke rising likely from the volcanoes. The valleys are of the oceans are made bare. And this is an event that can only be the flood destruction, because it's not a destruction by fire. That would be between Genesis 1, and 2, if there was a destruction by fire then. This is some event that seems to be associated with these other passages that connects to more than just the springs of water coming up out of the oceans and the river and seabeds, and then rain starting to fall as well. This is seemingly references that we can't place anywhere else, that seemingly can only go back to this great flood event that's also described in a similar way in the handout. So when we look at all of these accounts, and Isaiah 23 is another great passage as a dual prophecy that talks about prehistory, that seems to be describing this island that was destroyed by water. And I cover that off in detail in book 1. So in the Atlantis story, you have Poseidon, who mates with Clymene, a human female, to create 10 giant kings. They go evil, and then the gods bring this disaster by flood and other catastrophes. It seems to be identical, an event of perhaps a different civilization where the Adamites lived, but talking about the same event through the polytheist lens.
Wow, that was an amazing answer, Gary. And also, too, you have a whole chapter in book 1 just called Atlantis, right? So there's a ton of more information in Gary's book if you guys want to dive into more details about this topic. He just is a wealth of information as usual. And to me, when you were talking about all the storms that the gods were creating, it seems like, with all of the so-called climate change, and we know that the powers that be have the power to create storms. It seems like, not, as usual, nothing is new under the sun, right?
Yeah, and like Baal was a storm god. It's
right.
a common title for the chief god. So they have, I think, have an ability, and it may have been reduced over time with the destruction that they've reaped, but they seem to have an ability with their authority over the earth to do things with weather to a certain degree. We get accountings in the book of Enoch, not in the Bible, that we definitely have angels assigned to various responsibilities that include the weather. So they tend to counterfeit everything. So I think we want to go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say yes, definitely. Continue. I'm sorry. They counterfeit everything.
So I thought they do, and so they would use this to their advantage and to convince people, that they are, true gods. So I think we don't want to dismiss this understanding out of the occult without sort of realizing that if you have complete authority over the earth, that means you would have authority over the nature part. Now, there could be restrictions that have been put in over time, just as I think there's been restrictions with the interaction with humans when you have giants being created, all sorts of other creatures being created, likely was done again after the flood through the offspring gods. I think there was slowly some of those restrictions put back. But I would say they will either throw off these things or will be permitted to use these things again as they further indict themselves in the end time.
Yes. It makes me think too, like, in the Bible, severe famines were mentioned several times in the Old Testament. And it makes me wonder too, if that was the Most High's using that for his purposes, like Joseph, for example, was used during that famine, or was that the other gods that were putting judgment on their people for some reason or other, and the Most High brought in Joseph to help everyone? I know that's another question for another topic.
I would say this is my this is my speculation on it, is that you have good gods and you have evil gods. That's part of the dualism within the religion, and and separate from the dualism where they raise Satan to be the same equal type of God as the God of the Bible. So the evil gods, they don't really care about humankind, and the good gods say they like humankind better than the evil ones do. So we see this played out in white magic and black magic, and it's this typical dualism: good kings, evil kings, white hats, black hats, as we would understand the analogy to this day. So you could have had these events where you had these evil gods who just want to do horrible things to humankind, bringing the weather, and then God using that because he's more powerful, using that event to move his intercession into humankind and or intervening. I like intercede better in terms of one of the meanings of that he's interceding on behalf of people, God's people, to ensure the Messiah is going to come and the angelic rebellion is going to be put down through the creation of the Adamites that leads to Jesus coming through the Adamites, the resurrection, and then taking in the end time the angels to the lake of fire.
Right. It's so amazing when you realize the power that these gods had, and we don't really learn too much about like what these gods were capable of in the Bible, but when you bring in the extra biblicals, you bring in other resources, it just makes total sense and everything kind of comes together there. Also, Gary, I wanted to let you know, just in case we're still kind of getting used to this new tech here with the Google Meets. And so if we do happen to get kicked off and it says it may end in about 10 or 15 minutes, probably around break, just know that Zen will send you another link and you can just jump right back in. So just as a warning, so you know what to expect. Okay, let's go on to the next question here.
Sounds good.
Betsy. Okay, cool. From Betsy 007. She says, she's asking, why do some say that Satan is the father of Cain? And I just was, Gary, just before you answer this, I was rereading some of book 1 again, because for my 8th time, after I finished book 2, I was kind of going back to the beginning of that one, but I had to do some other research, and I noticed that you mentioned that Cain's name wasn't even originally Cain, or according to other resources, it was more like Kin, K-I-N. And so, and they said that he was, in your book, you said he was propped up because some say that he had Nephilim blood himself. So that might kind of tie into your answer here.
Yeah, so there's within Christianity, there's a strong belief that Cain was the physical offspring from Satan, and from the occult side, it's part of their doctrine as they bring in the Bible and usurp the patriarchs, and including Adam, but Cain is the one that they would raise up to be a little bit higher because being the offspring of Satan in that understanding, but also understand the occult accounts have other archons that may have impregnated Eve as well. So there's a few different versions of that, but it's the sort of understanding that Cain was this divine demigod, as all of the giants were looked at, and that he is this rival to humankind. And so it begins with that sort of understanding with Genesis 3:15 with the serpent seed, where after the fall, after the Nahash deceives Eve, who leads Adam to also eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, God lays down a curse prophecy that Eve and her offspring and that of the serpent are going to be at odds essentially throughout our period, our epoch of the Adamites until the end of the millennium, and even to the end of the millennium, based on the war with that Gog and Magog war and Satan being released again, is that serpent seed is that offspring. And so there's a thought that that serpent seed is referencing the line of Satan as a seraphim, because he's depicted as a seraphim and a serpent, more specifically in the New Testament and in Revelation 12, and a dragon. And a seraphim is a serpent-faced, six-winged serpent dragon angel. So he's part seraphim. Now, whether or not that's the form he would have had or not, because he may have had multiple forms and attributes. But if he was in a seraphim form, that would represent the seraphim seed, not the seed from the Nahash. But a lot of people even will go further and say the Nahash wasn't a separate being. It was actually Satan. And so now you have the serpentine imagery. The trouble is with that, though, is that Ezekiel 28 tells us he was cherubim while he was in the Garden of Eden. And the only name we get for an angel in the Garden of Eden, other than Satan, would be Gadrael, as is mentioned in the book of Enoch. Now, we don't get Gadrael in the Bible, but you can take that back to the Hebrew, meaning wall of God or God's wall. So that's the premise on it, but then you have to be able to build on it. So you're going to have a lot of references, about being the children of Satan, throughout the Bible, both New Testament and Old Testament. And you can interpret that either way as standalone passages, one being physical or one being spiritual, or both. So you still need to be able to build it sort of biblically and without getting into the complete translations of all of the different passages. We'll just do some quick highlights here. So Cain, and that's Hebrew Qayin. So pretty much the Q and the K is how it's transliterated. And I think that's the format that you were referring to, Lisa, with Cayenne. It's the old Hebrew or the old Semitic, right? So, but that word, yeah. So that word is, basically means, possession or possessed, right? And it was also the root word for the Kenites, who in mythology or in genealogy say that they go back as descendants of Cain. So it's the root word for that, and essentially the same word. But where you get the tie-in in the Hebrew through the name is that Cain, 7013 Cayenne, is sourced or a derivative of 7069 Kana, Qanah, as it's transliterated, which means acquired, to create, or to buy or possess. So when you look at the language in Genesis 3:1, with Cain, you have interesting sort of language that you can start to build on to try and make that sort of case. And I'm just going to pull that passage up here if I can, without taking too much time, because probably should have done that before. But
no, that's okay. We appreciate your answers on this, Gary. And for those of you listening in the chat, thank you guys so much for all to the moderators for putting up these links. And we know Zen has written several books on this topic as well, but it's always interesting to hear other points of view. And through Gary's research and going into original language always helps quite a bit. I also noticed too that one of the definitions for the word Cain could also be acquired. And it always was kind of strange to me that Adam would name his first child acquired, But okay, continue on, Gary. Did you find it?
I'm just having trouble with my Wi-Fi
That's
here, so but
that's
it should be hooked up. I'll try it again.
Okay. And I just want to thank Sherry, Tammy, Brick, Sharon. Thank you guys so much. If anyone has any questions that you would like Gary to address, I'm monitoring the chat as well. So if you could put that in all capital letters, then I can see it quite a bit easier. Thank you so much. There's been quite a few questions come in for next month. We will definitely put these questions on the list for Gary for next month, and he will be able to get his answers together here for you guys.
Yeah. So I just brought up the passage. It just was not wanting to cooperate. So Genesis 4:1 says, Adam knew Eve, his wife. She conceived and bare Cain and said, have gotten a man from the Lord. So acquired, received, possessed one, however you want to translate that. So when we look at that word gotten, um, it helps us to a certain degree with that meaning as well. And that word is kana. Just wanted to make sure on it. So, which is that word possess. So that's how people say that they acquired Cain from the Lord. And some people will say, well, even though that's going to be, Jehovah or Yahweh there, some people will interpret that as being a term for Satan there. But I see how they get there. And so when I look at whether Cain is from Satan or not, I don't really have any skin in the game in on it. What I can't do though is I can't get there completely biblically, because the language, as you look at the other sons that are going to be produced, whether it's Enoch or it's all the other ones in the Canaanite line, they almost have the identical same wording. So would you put that as all being, being received and from other angels? Probably not. And when I also look at the Nahash, this is a beast of the field, as it's talked about in Genesis 3:1, which is probably created in day 6, with all those other beasts of the earth and before humans are created. And Satan's not the one that's punished. So I'm not convinced that the serpent seed, that we can make that biblically. And if you get into a debate on it, you're going to get all of these different passages where they say, but you need to translate this specific word using this meaning, not the way it's translated, to try and get to the language that they're looking for to complete the allegorical interpretation of the passage. And so it's a very strong argument, but every time I look at each one of those ones, it doesn't really stand the test of making sense with other passages in the Bible or within the sentence. So I'm not against the concept. I can't get there biblically. And what I do know is in polytheism, they have a very strong sense of the spirit of Cain, or the way of Cain. And that's, again, a lot of the language that we get sort of biblically. But from a polytheist side, they do believe that he was the son of Satan or another angel, and that he had descendants, and those descendants survived the flood. So that's how they get there with it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much again for that answer, Gary. It looks like we are at break, so we will take a short break. And again, Gary, if you happen to get kicked off here, Zen will send you another link and we can get back on before, right after the hour. So everyone take a short break, get some drink, get a snack, whatever you guys want to do, and prepare for second hour, and we'll see you all in a few minutes. Shalom.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
When Justin and I found out we were having a little girl, we named her Eliana and started dreaming of what life would be like with her, where we would take her, what we would teach her, and of course, what we would read to her. One day we walked around a bookstore looking for books we might want for her and found nothing. So we started brainstorming what exactly we would want. Even from a young age, we wanted her to know and understand the heart of God and hidden truths that are in ancient biblical manuscripts like the Book of Enoch, and the idea of the Prophecy for Children series was born. Justin got hard to work, and Praise Yah released the Prophecy for Children series. We are grateful for the support and amazing feedback from others who have been wanting the same for their children. With our newest addition to the family, Ezra, we also added Enoch's Judgment of the Giants to this prophecy series. We're excited to keep writing books for our children to share with our truth-seeking family. To order these books today, please check out sacredwordpublishing.com/collections/children's-store.
Hello friends, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. We are continuing our monthly Ask Me Anything with Brother Gary Wayne, author, speaker, just amazing research all around. Personally, I've read through his first book. I'm going on 8 times now. And the second one, I'm going through my second time. I took the second one a lot slower than the first one. But if you guys have any questions for Gary here in the YouTube live chat, I'm watching for any questions, and we'll be asking these of Gary next month. Please put them in all capital letters, and we appreciate everyone. Thank you so much, moderators, for keeping everything so friendly in the chat and sharing the links, and just such a wonderful time of fellowship here every month for Gary's Ask Me Anything. Brother Gary, are you there?
I am.
With us? Okay, good. I just want to make sure. And we will continue with the questions that were submitted last month with TJ's question. When are the Nephilim and giants returning, and where are they now? Antarctica?
Well, good question. So, I mean, we can't be 100% sure that giants in the same size and format are going to come back as they originally came. I think they might. They may not be quite as large or as powerful. If we look at the examples of giants before the flood and after the flood, the ones before the flood seem to be larger and more gifted than the ones after the flood, and also had better abilities to reproduce. So there's a distinction. It's almost like the rules of engagement have been a little bit more limited, and all of the gods, whether it's Zeus or Osiris or Baal or Enki or Enlil, all of these gods who participated in creating giants, they disappear shortly after the flood as well, and also go to the pit prison. So we don't, after a very short time after the flood, see these physical gods walking amongst us like they did at least to the time of Babel, maybe even for a short time afterwards, and what they did before the flood. And so there seems to be this moving line of create some horrible violations and there's more restrictions put on, just sort of speculating on that. So if I roll that forward to the end time and they're going to create more spurious offspring, then will they be even smaller and less gifted? Perhaps, or maybe God will lift all of those restrictions because he wants the fallen angels to completely indict themselves as with their offspring. So if we're going to see them show up, I think it's going to be a lot closer to being a sign of when the last 7 years are about to begin. One might say that you could even make a case that they might even be part or all of the 10 kings of the Seventh Empire that will be in place at the start of the last 7 years. So it's hard to know, or we could be dealing just with their descendants. And I know we're going to be dealing with their descendants through the royales, but I also leave open a possibility that if the fallen angels know, just as they knew what would happen and did the second incursion from spite, no matter what the consequences, the Harum anathema oath, both before and after the flood, that they swore, then they would be prepared to do that again to whatever success rate they will be permitted to do that with. So I think there's a significant possibility we should prepare ourselves for giants. But what we do know is we're going to see the descendants of them bring about the world government. So I would say, when are we going to see them? Well, we're either going to see them recreated between now and the start of the last 7 years, because I do think we're in the fig tree generation, or we're going to see the giants that aren't being reproduced but are being released, as with the Antarctica mythos and similar mythoses around the world where you have giants in stasis. So, but I guess you could be reproducing them in Antarctica as well and then waiting to release them. So I think Antarctica is going to have a big impact on how people perceive the last generation. So, and I think we're in the last generation. We're seeing more evidence of that. And the information, the knowledge, and whatever else comes out of Antarctica is said to have the ability to completely overturn preconceived conclusions, which is a very, very remarkable statement. And so it could include that and much more. So I think we should be patient. I think they're not going to want to tip their hands too quickly. So timing is key when we would see the release of these giants or a recreation of them.
Right. And I think, from what you've done in your research, especially with book 2, we're seeing quite a few of, I think all the kings of the earth, the kings and queens of the earth, they do have quite a bit of high-level Nephilim blood, according to your research as well, right, Gary?
Well, exactly. And they claim that. And they claim to keep their genealogies back to specific fallen angels and specific Rephaim and Nephilim patriarchs. So when they call themselves a royale, I mean, that literally means, in their understanding, kings of God.
Right.
Kings, Roy, Old French, AL transliteration for EL, for an angel or a god, as in Baal, which means Lord God or husband God or master God, depending on how you want to translate that. So they believe they have the divine right to rule because they're the physical offspring of these celestial mafia godfathers. So, and whether or not it's true or not, we need to deal with that. They believe with it. They believe at that, and it's what they do with that belief system that's really important. So, even in the end time, in the book of Revelations, where we get references to the kings and the mighty ones and the great ones, Both starting in Revelation 6 and also in the time of Babylon and its destruction in Revelation 18, Revelation 16, and Revelation 19. And in the Gog War in Ezekiel 38 and 39, we get the mighty ones, which are the Gibborim, which is a description not always used to describe giants, but generally is used to describe giants or giant-like people. And also in Joel 1 and 2, we get the mighty ones as well. And these are the wars of the last 7 years that are being talked about. Likely the Revelation 9 war, but some people also look at Gog, Ezekiel 38 and 39 as the Armageddon war. I think it's the same as Joel 1 and 2 and Revelation 9, but it's an end time war nonetheless, and we get these mighty ones and these great and mighty men of the end time. That goes back to the Greek word megastranes and megas, which is words that are used to describe giant-like things and genealogical relationships as well. And back to the Indo-Aryan word, the language of the giants, meg, which literally is meaning a giant. So, and all the descriptions that sort of go with it. So we live and breathe in the language that they brought with them into the languages with intermixing with the people of Babel. And so they keep that mythos front and center in everything they do. And I think the Bible shows us that we live in their world and that they are going to be part of the visible ones of the end time, working for the invisible ones. So I think we should take them, at their word that they're going to do what they intend to do, and that's to bring about the end time and to bring about the Armageddon war, because they want that showdown with God.
Yes, yeah. And speaking of visible ones, with research I've been doing, and of course I've been sending you some stuff in Messenger just so you can see the comparisons that I've been doing with the celebrities, because most of these kings and rulers of the earth, like personally, I didn't really even know who any of them were except maybe the British royals. But once you look into all of the different royals, especially the ones that are said to have the highest level of Nephilim blood on both parents' side, like you were explaining before, Gary, from mother and father, that would be like the King of Jerusalem title. You can totally see that they love to be elevated to fame through their media, and they use different masks and disguises and makeup and wigs and whatever it takes. But to me, it would make the most sense that that's them that play all the like leading roles in movies and in news and in the governments and in the media. And it's just it's they've disguised themselves so well, but you can still kind of see the underlying. But they purposely, I think, are not very public in their roles as kings and queens, but more so with their media type roles. Would you agree with that, Gary?
Well, and that type of imagery and allegory has been with them all through their literature. And particularly they would, because they write about, and even to this day, they have a little bit different style, like in the mythopoetic style, where they have all of these characters that go back into prehistory, and they provide genealogical connections in those allegories, and they just put them in a different setting. But the allegories and the meanings of the characters, the belief systems, the locations, everything in there is their history. And so in the theater, and in this type of writings, that goes back to Shakespeare, and it goes back to Ovides, and it goes back to the great writings of the Greek classics, that the history is in there, but there's also some allegory and some fictionalized stuff that's in there as well. And you have to be an adept to understand all of the allegories. But when they portrayed those characters on stage, we see the birth of, whether it's these masks that are used in Chinese theater, or the white mask was used in Roman and Greek theaters, or the white paint that you put on. These are all masks that are, again, allegorical, taciturn imageries, communicating to people that these are, ancient giants, and the names, of course, and the individuals were descendants of the giants and giants as this history comes down. So when the actor goes in, he's channeling that individual and puts on this mask. And so I'm sure on like some of the Chinese masks, and I don't know for sure because I don't understand the language of that taciturn imagery, but they could be with all the different colors and looks, identifying specific individuals. It's more generic in the Roman and Greek classical theater. But they're channeling that individual. And so you see that understanding even today, that an actor, when he's in character, he becomes that person. And that's the ultimate that they're trying to achieve. And the understanding of that is you become that character by channeling that demonic spirit.
Yes, yes.
So,
that's what I was hoping you would say.
And so they'll do other things to make them sort of look like royales, to try and channel that or imitate that as well. So there's a look that they're trying to perpetuate when they're doing that, and it's all for their own purposes. So, and who they're emulating could be, a royale of today or somebody of the past. But again, it's all in that belief system that they're part of this continuous line of elites. And understand that the Indo-Aryans were, and where the Pi word comes from, Proto-Indo-Aryan or Indo-European, that was the language of the giants, right? And so Aryan means nobility in ancient Indo-Aryan, and that they are the elites, the elites, I would say Elim in the original nature, because they look at themselves as little gods. And elites probably used downstream because they had to intermarry after the flood with humans, otherwise they would go extinct. So they're hybrids as they come downstream. So thus ite versus I am. And elite is, described as a superior group through genealogical history, through privilege, through education, to essentially rule the world because they're the chosen ones. And that etymology of elite will identify that as the chosen ones. So they are the elect, as we would understand that biblically, because they counterfeit everything as the elect of the celestial mafia godfathers.
Yes, great answer. Thank you so much, Gary, for expanding on that. And we'll go on to our next question here. This is kind of along those same lines from Ashley Allen. She's asking, how was the pantheon of gods all over the world at the same time?
It's a really good question. So let's start back with the council of gods that we have biblically that rule over the 70 nations, both before and after the flood. And that we get this interesting term in the book of Enoch that makes sense of the 70 nations, the 70 in the council, and the 7 wandering stars. And we get wandering stars in the Bible. And these are using a mixture of post-diluvian gods and antediluvian gods, or you might look at it as the parent gods and the offspring gods. And they're all allegories for the original ones anyway. So if you look at a term in the book of Enoch, not only do you have that 7 number again, but you also get the chief of 10s. So if you had a chief of 10 gods in a hierarchy, and there was 7 major ones, you would get 70 nations. So it could be part of their hierarchy. And that 7, as I say, is a standard in their understanding, even though monotheistically, 7's an important number biblically as well. So again, counterfeiting, usurping, and corrupting it in their own image. When we look at these 7 major angels that are described in the book of Enoch, And then you have the 7 Satans that are described as the followers of Satan, because Satan sits above the council of gods. And then we have these 7 angels as an understanding in the book of Revelation, understand the full extent of this concept. But you can now take these 7 stars, 7 angels, back to the 7 counterfeit ones. And they seem to be the chief of the 10s that make up the council of the gods. Now, with that understanding, is they had 7 holy mountains before the flood.
Oh, wow.
And so, and you might even say 8, but I kind of think the council of the gods was at Mount Hermon. And that's where Satan sits above as well. And we would know that as not only as that as where the Baalim council had their council located, along with the council of giants of the Detanu at Mount Saphon, which is the Ugaritic name for Mount Hermon. And biblically, we know there's more than one name for Mount Hermon, because we get Sion, we get Shinir, and we get Sirion, all listed in the Bible. So Saphon is kind of similar to that as well. So I think it's different names, and I think the name becomes the name changed to for a ongoing mythos as to what happened there. So Hermon is from the Hebrew word haram. There's different variations, Cheram, and C, and a couple other vowel differences, all meaning curse and accursed. And this is the mountain where the harem anathema oath was sworn to carry it out to end to create the giants. Harem is same word and
Right.
it means curse or accursed. And so this is that oath, and an oath can be, an accursed oath, and that's what this is, and that's the anathema. That's the ecclesiastical denunciation word that will take you to the lake of fire, right? That's how serious that oath is, as
Right.
you really dig into the meaning of that. So even Nippur is thought to be located at Mount Hermon. Because when you look at the Epic of Gilgamesh, and they're going to Nippur, the Council of the Gods is located there, the Council of the Ring Lords is located there, and Gilgamesh and Enkidu are going there to the Cedar Forest to deal with King Hababa. And so the Cedar Forest are the cedar trees that are around Mount Hermon. So we know for sure this is a central location for a holy mountain that they have usurped away from God, and that there was other mountains in other civilizations. So when I talked earlier about people look at 4, 7, 9, or 11, I have difficulty in creating consistency beyond 7. I might even say 8, and might want to and maybe have Lemuria as part of that as the 8th. But certainly 7 holy mountains, 7 civilizations makes sense. So now, if you look at these chiefs of the 10s that make up the 70, each of those 7 are going to have their holy mountain where they have a junior council over their portion of the 10 nations, right? So it's when you look at the major pantheon of the top 7 or the top 10 and the top 12, as you get those different emphasis on the numbers and how many there are, there is that hierarchy of the 7 that seems to be at the top. So it's that one pantheon of 7 that's all above, and those are going to be represented by junior gods to them in that hierarchy and council as well. So they become like an allegory for those 7 angels, just as You also have within the major ones, and let's just take like Baal or El out of the Canaanite pantheon, both of them were also allegories in the occult for Satan. And they are sun gods and they are chief gods. But also understood that Satan is that as well, and that sort of reflect their leader. So look at it as the top 7 in the hierarchy, and then you have these different civilizations that each of those 7 Satans are going to rule over.
Wow, that was it. That was such an amazing answer, Gary. And just to know that there are these 7 mountains on Earth, as you were talking, because I did kind of a in-depth study on Mount Kailash, which I was sharing with you the last time. And I pulled up there's a map that they have if you just do a search called the ley lines of the Earth, and they have all these different chakras. And it's amazing because just what you said about the 7 mountains on Earth, there's 7 mountains mentioned on these ley lines. They're called like the holy spots on Earth or whatever you want to call them, the chakra points. And I would like to name them just so that you can see what this research I just did. It's blowing my mind here. So that Mount Hermon, the one you mentioned, of course, that's one of them. Mount Kailash is another one in Tibet. Mount Fuji in Japan is one of them. Mount Haleakala, and that's here in Maui in Hawaii. Mount Shasta in California. Mount Meru at the North Pole, or some other people call it other things, the mountain of the sides of the north, or other names for that. And then Table Mountain in South Africa. And I just think that that's pretty cool. It lines up to what you were just saying. And I'm not saying that these were the holy mountains of the gods, but it's kind of ironic that they line up pretty well with these what they call the chakras of Earth, or the places where they have like the most spiritual energy, I would say, on Earth. What do you think of that, Gary? I just happened to look that up.
Well, and it would make sense that some of the mountains, let's say that would have been before the flood, they may have gone underwater with the upheaval of the conflagration of catastrophes going on, and
Right.
so they would have to be replaced after the flood. So I've never been able to get my hands on something that I would look at reliable for these 7 mountains, both before and after the flood, because they all have sort of contradictions. Just when you start to think you might be getting somewhere, you come across some other names and things. And so, but certainly major cultures in the early time would have felt that they needed a holy mountain to raise up their stature. And also in line with that, they would build pyramids and ziggurats as a form of a holy mountain.
Right, exactly. And it's interesting too, because I noticed on all these sites, I've been to quite a few of these already, especially Mount Hermon, the largest UN base is located on the top of that mountain, and UNESCO heritage sites are on every single one of these. And so that's, whenever I say UNESCO heritage site, and there's more, there's like hundreds of them all over the world, that the UN has take great care to preserve whatever. And I think it's also to make sure no one else goes digging around in there. But taking great,
you got it. Yeah, you got
great care to preserve these for some specific reason, right? But okay, great. Thank you so much for that, Gary. Let's go on to the next question from Benjamin Curry. He says, Revelation 21, verse 22 speaks of no temple present. Will there be a future temple?
I think Benjamin is, because he's referring to Revelation 21, is not referring to the end time temple, but after the millennium. So when we look at the context for what Revelation 21 is telling us, I think we get the answer. So in 21:1, there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth created. So that's the start of everything new. What this new world is going to be like, it's hard to know, but everything starts anew, uncorrupted, because the millennium has been completed and now we're off to eternity. And then in verse 2, a new Jerusalem is provided to us from heaven. So there's not going to be this city built down there. It's going to be perfect, and it has to be perfect, and it's a perfect oiketarian, so to speak, a dwelling place for the spirit. And in verse 3, it tells us, and why I make the speculation to the Oiketerian, like a larger holy of holies, right? That was used in the first temples. So in verse 3, it says, God will then dwell with us. So a dwelling place for him, New Jerusalem. And I look at that as the new Holy of Holies, and the throne of God is going to be on earth. So it needs to be bigger because he's bringing his throne that was in heaven to the earth to be with us, to dwell amongst us, like he did with the angels in the spirit world. But now you see this conjoining of this as one world that has heaven in it as well, by the sounds of it. But maybe not, because heaven comes from, or Jerusalem comes from the heaven. So, but there is something new going on here. And what we're told is that God and Jesus are the temple who are dwelling with us. So there's no need for that temple to have a situation, because they're with us, and they're with us in Jerusalem, and they are the temple. So no new temple, but still a temple nonetheless, a greater one.
Right. And it also says in scripture that do you not know that you're the temple of the Holy Spirit? So technically our bodies are as well, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's go on to the next question from Isaiah Chavez. He's asking, why did it seem the Israelite kings lost a battle and fled in 2 Kings 3?
I'm not sure why Isaiah is asking that question as you read the whole chapter, but maybe there's a different chapter you might be referring to. I don't know that. But in 2 Kings 3, that's Joram, son of Ahab, king of Israel, and he's aligned with Jehoshaphat at the same time, king of the southern kingdom. And at this time, King Moab rebels against Joram, and he lines up Jehoshaphat to march out to war with him. And Jehoshaphat is basically saying, let's go through Edom to go there to do the war. So now they bring in the king of Edom. So there's 3 kings in this alliance that are going to go to war with the king of Moab. And then Joram says at one point is that God has seemingly called, and I'm paraphrasing it, these 3 kings together to be handed over to the Moabites. For some reason, he thinks they're going to be wiped out. I don't know where the fear is coming from. It's not really decided, but I think it's Jehoshaphat who jumps in and says, well, let's consult one of our prophets. And so they consult Elisha, and basically they're told, no, you're going to win the war. And so Israel and the alliance marches out, and they defeat the king of Moab. So they don't lose the war, but there is doubt by Joram in this leading up to the battle. So, but if the larger point is that did kings of Judah and Israel lose wars? Yes, they did. They only lost wars in 2 ways. One was when God permitted the curses of the covenant to be applied through foreign kings to punish and enslave them until they repented to come back. The second thing is that they would I kind of lost my train of thought on what the second thing was in terms of the wars that they would lose. Oh, I remember now. So, and we get some of these examples in the time of the conquest, that if Israel decides to go to war against the giants in the time of the conquest, or downstream in the time of the monarchy or in the age of the judges, and they don't have God with them, then they haven't consulted God over this, and God hasn't authorized it, they get their butts whipped. Every time.
That's true. Every time.
So So it's not that they went through their whole history and didn't lose wars. They had a history of not getting permission, or just from the extraordinary violations against the laws of the covenant, they would suffer the curses. And when they repented, they would suffer the blessings. And eventually, of course, both the northern and the southern kingdom suffered all of the curses. And the whole history would have been different if they would have kept the covenant, and we would have seen things done through the blessings. However, God is Alpha Omega, and he will reconcile them through the curses in the last 3.5 years.
All right. Thank you again for that answer, Gary. Now, as you'll notice, I had a couple questions I wanted to throw in here to ask you. I've been, again, rereading your books, and I did kind of a little bit of a dive about Judas Iscariot, because he always kind of made me wonder, and just some things just didn't add up that he did after being with the Messiah for a few years and seeing all the miracles and knowing that he was the Messiah, that he would betray him. So I'm asking, was Judas Iscariot of Keriot, an Edomite, similar to Doeg in the Old Testament, living in Israel? Would that explain his betrayal?
It is a possibility. I don't know whether he is Edomite or he is Jewish, a part of the southern kingdom. We don't get too much for genealogy on Judas. His father is Simon, and Simon, we don't get much more information on him other than he's living in southern Judah. And that's kind of close to Edom. But it's the name Iscariot that is interesting, or the title Iscariot. So in John 6 is quite specific as Judas Iscariot. So in John 6, 12, and 13, we get those terms, and I think a few other times in the New Testament as well. And so Iscariot, and it can mean an inhabitant of Kerioth, and or meaning men of Kerioth. So that's where you're probably getting the Kerioth from. And Kerioth can be a couple of locations. So in Joshua, it's one of the cities in southern Judah where Simon was from. So if you're a fan that he's not Edomite and he's Judean, then that's probably the location that you're going to apply for. But you also have in I think it's Genesis 48 2 times where it is listed as an Edom, or and south of Moab, as you get sort of the descriptions. In Bozrah, it's associated with Bozrah. So that's in Jeremiah, not Genesis. Sorry if I said Genesis on that. Jeremiah 48. So that's in Edom. So you've got two choices there, and sort of biblically we don't get much on it. So when you take that back to the Hebrew, it's actually two words. It's Ish and Guria. And so Ish is a man or a champion. And typically champions were kind of warriors and Nephilim-like and Edomite-like. So you get a connection into there. It also means city. So and the plural form of Kyria is Kerioth. So, and we get that being defined as 7152 from 7149, Kerioth, and 7153 as in Kerioth, as in a city, like Kiriath Arba. So it's equivalent to that word as city. And it's described as a city in South Judah in Moab. So again, now you get this almost a conflagration, or possibly a city in Moab as well. So you're still kind of saying, well, it's kind of one or the other. And then the only other thing I dug up on Mr. Iscariot, because I'd like to know more about him. I wish
Yeah.
because he's named as the son of perdition.
Yes,
And
exactly.
and my thought process is that, well, the only other one called son of perdition is Antichrist, who's likely going to have Nephilim bloodlines as well,
Oh, definitely.
of some sort, right? And
Hmm.
so there's a passage in John 6:70 where Judas is said to be a devil. Now, a lot of people, have written in the past, when they look at that, that means demon, daemon, just as it's used for evil spirits and unclean spirits when Jesus is dispossessing it. And if it was a demon spirit, then he's going to be Nephilim-like. And then by contrast, he's not going to be, as a demonic spirit, a counterfeit spirit in him. He's not going to be from a Judean genealogy. He would be from the Edomite one. But the problem with that is the word isn't daemon, it's diablos.
Oh,
So, which is used
okay.
for Satan. So unless he's a direct offspring of Satan, kind of like what we were talking about with Cain, then that doesn't really help us out either. But when I look at the term devil to describe him, and also son of perdition, there's you can make a case that he has some sort of Edomite bloodline in there, but it's that Simon individual as the father, but maybe he had an Edomite wife too. I mean, we don't know how high up he would have married into the nobility, so it's a
Right.
mystery.
Yeah. That's,
But
there. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, but good work on establishing him that he was from Kirioth, because most people don't know what Iscariot means. So, and names and titles always have an importance. We just have to dig deeper. But I couldn't dig deep enough to get a firm answer on whether he was Edomite or Judean.
Yeah, it sparked my interest because I was wondering if there's something in the Bible or anywhere. Like you said, there's not that much information about this guy in the Bible except for his name, where he was from. So all of those clues just seemed to think like it made me think like there's no way that he was just Judean. Like he had to have Nephilim blood in there somewhere. And there's also a pretty interesting book. It's in the New Testament Apocrypha that was released, I believe, in 2017. Called The Life of Judas Iscariot. And I've read through that. It's got some pretty wild imagery in there, but it says that before he was a disciple of the Christ, he worked for Herod. He was like a mercenary. So I'm not sure how much of that is true. Like you said, we always have to be careful when we go outside the Bible, but there is a book on his life, and it was a pretty sad and sorry life that he had. And it made me wonder why he would be even chosen as a disciple, with that type of background.
Yeah.
But
Well, and making just a connection there, if he was working in the service of Herod, who was an Edomite through his bloodlines,
yes,
that would suggest some sort of nobility connection there, that he would be part of the court, or as an elevated stature within society, working for the king. So another possible connection, but unfortunately not biblically. But you do
yeah,
you certainly can build a circumstantial case that this was a genealogical and religious follower of the fallen angels, right? So
mhm.
you can make that case. I just can't nail it, and you know me, I'm pretty stubborn. If I can't completely nail it, I'll recognize both sides of the argument, but I have to be a bit on the fence because you just don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was hoping there'd be some clues just with his name, but it's not too specific. So I'm with you, where we don't know unless,
Yep.
There's miraculously some other
Yep.
evidence that surfaces
Yep.
from the bowels of the Vatican or something. Okay. My other question I
Who
have for
knows?
you. Yeah, right. My other question I have for you, and this is our last question, it says, we know from John 1, verse 28, that John the Baptist was baptizing in Beth Abara in the Jordan River at the area where it flows into the Dead Sea. This area is now called Qumran. Wouldn't it make more sense the Essenes lived in an area down the coast of the Dead Sea in an area called Ein Gedi, which means eye of the goat in Hebrew, and the Levitical priests who were banished from the temple by the Pharisees and Sadducees occupied the caves at Qumran?
Yeah, interesting sort of question. So everybody just sort of assumes that the Qumran documents are from the Essenes, and they would be living up in that area. Now, there are a couple of different sects of the Essenes who lived in different portions of the desert. And we also have accounts of the Pharisees going to the desert, but we don't get, and it's not universally sort of accepted, and we don't have a specific location. So when we look at the accounting, let's say in John 1:28, when it's talking about John, he went beyond the Jordan River, so east of the Jordan River, where he was baptizing people. And so that's going to place him in the northern part, and on the other side, east of the Jordan River, and likely sort of just south and east of Jericho, which is directly across from on the west side of the Jordan River. And then the 4 caves are typically located as you go around the north of the Dead Sea on the west side, right in the top corner, but a little bit further south, you're going to have the 4 different caves and where Qumran is located. And then you have this place of Ein Gedi that is further south than that, which is sort of south and east of Hebron, but not very much south, but right on the Dead Sea. And then you have Masada further south and slightly inward on the west side. So just to give sort of a description of the geography of what we're talking about. Some people also describe Ein Gedi in the translation of Ein as the spring of the goat, or spring of the kid, or the eye of the kid. So Ein has a couple of words that you could use to take that back with. Or with that different sort of understanding. I like the eye of the goat translation myself, but it's more common to say it as the spring of the goat. And the word goat there is EZ for a goat, but as it's kind of used in its applications, this is a young goat, and so a kid. So there's passages where you can sort of look that up and then take it back to the Hebrew if you wanted. So just so people know where you're getting that from. So when I look at what's going on here, I mean, you could have had the Pharisees that were going up north there, and you could place the Essenes down in Ein Gedi, which is very close to Masada, understanding that the Essenes occupied Masada during that battle, right? So it seems a little bit more closer to where their major fortress that they had, their last stand at. So to me, that would make sense. But we also have to keep in mind there's 2 different groups that have just nuances to what they believe, but they essentially believe the same thing. And they lived in a couple of separate locations. But you just can't just naturally assume that the Essenes weren't the only ones up in the north, or that they were in the north. It could have certainly have been the Pharisees that were occupying those areas.
Right. I wanted to read to you, Gary. I'm not sure if I had told you in the last show, but I am a co-author with a book that was published last November with a group called The God Culture. It's based in the Philippines, and it's called The Mystery of the Three Kings. I wrote the foreword, and I was part of the editing and gathering information, part of that writing. But we started out with an introduction, and it's basically called Where Was Qumran? And so I thought it was really interesting. I wanted to share this with you, so maybe you could use this in your research as well. Have you heard of Pliny the Elder? He's a historian.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yep.
there's an excerpt from his book that we used as part of the research, and it's from his Natural History Book 5. And he says, on the west side of the Dead Sea, but out of range of the noxious exhalations of the coast, is the solitary tribe of the Essenes. And then he goes on to say in the next paragraph, lying below the Essenes was formerly the town of Engedi. Next comes Masada, like what you're saying. It's very close in proximity to Masada. And we've been, Noble and I have been to both of these locations when we went to Israel about 10 years ago or so, and got to see it. It's about 20 miles down. It's pretty far as far as like if you're walking, especially. And so Pliny the geographer,
Right.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just wanted to say one thing. Yes, you already have helped me out, because in my translation it doesn't say Engedi, it says Engada, Engadda, and I had no idea where that was.
Okay,
or
well,
what
great.
it was. So
Okay, great. Yeah, things kind of change over time, and it's hard to like figure it out. And to me, it helped to use this historical source, because when we visited Qumran, they basically tell you, yes, this is where the Essenes live, but you do a little bit more research, and I looked at a bunch of different maps, and I just couldn't agree with what we're being told. So we go on to write this, and this isn't from Pliny. This is like what we've taken from his writing from this natural history book. From Pliny the geographer, he located the Essenes in the mountains overlooking Engedi, 25 miles south of Qumran, and he even anchors it to Masada, just to the south, and that is the southern tip, and it's not really near Qumran. And this is affirmed in mass-scale archaeology called the Essene Find in Engedi. This includes a very ancient temple identified as a Chalcolithic temple, a 4th millennium BC, which was not built by the Essenes, but likely part of their compound in the mountains. You know, they're this very, like a secret society, right? And then also, archaeologists discovered a synagogue with many symbols identifying these Essenes as the secret cult throughout history, fitting to everything we know about the Essenes, who didn't live in Qumran. They were obsessed with peacocks, and they worshiped the peacock angel. I think you've talked about this before, as a Persian entity identified by many as the deity known as Asmodeus. And they etched a swastika-like symbol on the wall, very prominently displayed an 8-point star of Ishtar on the floor and tiles. And they even offer what appears a very Masonic warning on the wall. And so that particular find, the Essene find in Engedi, to me, that kind of solidifies what Pliny is saying in his history book, and just kind of like how we've always been just conditioned to think that the Essenes lived in Qumran, and those were all their writings. You know, all of the books that were in there, the Book of Enoch, the entire Bible basically, except the Book of Esther was found there, right? And all the other the battles between the sons of light and the sons of darkness, and they can easily usurp and try to call themselves the sons of Zadok, but we know that the Levitical priests were the original sons of Zadok. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, and also the Pliny, also puts a location as further south as part of their area down by, the Sodom, destruction area, as you read on in that chapter that you were talking about.
Right.
So what we do know is in the Qumran documents is that they do refer to themselves, if these are the Essenes, as the sons of Zadok, or the sons of righteousness. But in the accountings of the Essenes, they tend to usurp things for their own purposes and have a different meaning on it, right? Whether or not it's the Nazarene title or the Nazarite title, all the different sort of variations on that. So we want to be very, very careful. I know it's so popular these days to have people say, well, this is where Jesus and John the Baptist came out of. But all of the history that we get, that I've discovered, suggests that that their religion in their own writings say that they were, 2,000 years old at the time of Pliny.
Wow.
That predates the Levite priesthood. That goes
Yeah.
back to that really essentially links them back to the Therapeutate. And Strong's Cyclopedia versus Strong's Dictionary, it's the massive encyclopedias books that they do, which matches up very well with a Strong's Concordance, gives you more information. They documented the scenes called a peculiar dogma, and it rejected most all of the Jewish sacrifices and made their fellowship an exclusive one. So they rejected a lot of what the Pharisees or the Sadducees were believing.
Oh, wow. That's
And in
interesting.
fact, Church Father Epiphanius, he described two groups of the Essenes, and that the Nazarene sect forbid the books of Moses as a book of fiction.
Wow, that is interesting. And I love your chapter in your first book on the Essenes. That was part of my first introduction, years ago when I first read this to this particular group. As I was wondering when we visited Israel before I read your book, I kept saying, why do they keep talking about these Essenes? And you start this chapter out very well with the verse from Ezekiel that describes these guys about 25 men with their backs toward the temple of the Lord, their faces to the east, bowing to the east and bowing to the sun. And that was their worship, right?
Yeah, it was. And that's the first sign that you get them. And so there's another interesting piece that Epiphanius was detailed with him. He said the Nazarene, they were Jews by nationality, originally from Gileades and Bashanites and the Transjordan. So relationship with Bashan. Well as, and anyways, they acknowledge Moses and they acknowledge that I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. If people want to recognize some of the history out there, they acknowledged Moses and believed that he received the laws, not this law, however, but some other. And so they were Jews who kept all the Jewish observances, but they would not offer sacrifice or eat meat. They considered it unlawful to eat meat or make sacrifices with it. They claim that these books are fictions and that none of these customs were instituted by the fathers. I mean, this was the difference between the Nazarene and the others.
Wow. Well, thank you again, Gary. I've seen we're probably going to get cut off in about a minute, so I wanted to end the show and we really appreciate you, like Zen said, coming onto the channel once a month. And everyone out there, we thank you guys so much for your participation, for your amazing questions. We definitely have a really good lineup for next month. And so for all of you, Gary is here the first Wednesday of each month. So you guys all have a wonderful evening. And we appreciate all the moderators for putting up the links and keeping everything so friendly in the chat. And we just give all thanks and praise to the Most High for allowing us to be able to meet like this and share this information. So with all of that, everyone, shalom. And thank you again, Brother Gary. We'll see you guys next time.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
Become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
When Justin and I found out we were having a little girl, we named her Eliana and started dreaming of what life would be like with her, where we would take her, what we would teach her, and of course, what we would read to her. One day we walked around a bookstore looking for books we might want for her and found nothing, so we started brainstorming what exactly we would want. Even from a young age, we wanted her to know and understand the heart of God, and hidden truths that are in ancient biblical manuscripts like the Book of Enoch, and the idea of the Prophecy for Children series was born. Justin got hard to work and praise Yah released the Prophecy for Children series. We are grateful for the support and amazing feedback from others who have been wanting the same for their children. With our newest addition to the family, Ezra, we also added Enoch's judgment of the giants to this prophecy series. We're excited to keep writing books for our children to share with our truth-seeking family. To order these books today, please check out sacredwordpublishing.com/collections/children's-store.
Thank you everybody for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.